Welcome everybody to another episode of the Old School Cannabis Project. Please hit subscribe. We're close to 1,000 followers now. Joined as ever by co-host Rich and rejoined by a good friend of ours now, Medman in Canada, and also joined by Trent in Oregon. So welcome to the show. Thank you for joining us, guys. And Trent's here to talk, amongst other things, about his knowledge and experience of inflated THC numbers within the, I guess, lab analysis sector in industry. So, yeah, would you like to do a quick introduction to yourself, Trent, and then tell us about it all?
Yeah, I'm an Oregon grower. Been here growing since '98, and I first started talking about the testing issue back in 2013. I was in Montana at the time, where the actual first legal businesses were in Montana. They took our medical laws here on the West Coast, and the activists that got it passed in 2004 were able to take out the parts where you're limited to 3 cards, and you could actually sell to your card holders in Montana. So they took the part out where you couldn't sell to them. Basically, like, the West Coast medical laws were meant for, like, if you're taking care of a sick family member, a caregiver is just like growing their crop for them. It was never a business. So when I went to Montana, excuse me, and and I was helping, some of these companies out there, I realized they were spraying all the way till cut down, and they had people that had serious health conditions for medical cards. So I wrote an article for a local health magazine calling for testing in cannabis. And that's kind of how I got into the whole testing discussion. But initially, it was because I was worried about sprays getting people sick. In Montana, they had it where you were only linked to one provider, so you could only buy from one provider. And that's how I was able to tell that the sprays were making people sick, because certain growers, all their people were getting sick that I was consulting. And then after I got it to where they weren't spraying in flower anymore, all of a sudden everybody stopped getting sick, because they're like, medical card holders were in their grow working for them, stuff like that. So they would talk about how they get these headaches and nausea and all these, basically the same symptoms of CHS was coming from people spraying things like neem oil. And so that's how I got into the testing argument. And then when Oregon legalized, we came back, we sold our Montana company, came back really excited about actually having testing in cannabis, to be able to, see my stats on different CBD, different terps, just was all around excited for testing. And until I realized that the THC numbers kept climbing and climbing. And I started talking to other growers who were talking about how they were putting keef on buds, and that the sampler wasn't pulling the sample themselves. They were just basically handing them a spike sample. I believe
That's
some
an
were
old Dutch trick.
Yeah, it was basically the labs were competing for our business, and it was not real testing at all. So everything that I was pushing for originally was not what was happening. And so to make a long story short, how it became a national topic was Hightimes had done an article on this dispensary here in Oregon that had 50% THC on the shelf. If we're talking flower, 50% THC. And so I was working with some labs trying to close these loopholes in New York. So I was hoping that if New York fixed their regulations, I could show it in Oregon to our legislature and get it fixed. And they're like, you need to get on LinkedIn. I'm not much of a social media person. Like, that's just not my thing. But I was like, okay, because LinkedIn, I guess, had all the like labs and different companies on it they were explaining. So I got on LinkedIn in June of last year and started saying, hey, this is all fraud. I mean, like, rewinding it back, I was already showing this to our legislature. I wrote an article called "The Fox Guarding the Hen House," and was explaining how lab fraud was a risk to consumers and that there would eventually be lawsuits. So when I got on LinkedIn, I started talking about how it was all fraudulent. It's not real testing. The labs compete for our business. We provide the batch that's going to be sampled. On the LinkedIn, I started talking about how it was all fraudulent, and eventually consumers were going to sue. A week later, an Arkansas lawsuit popped up, and it was a RICO lawsuit against a couple cannabis companies and a lab there. And so the labs were already watching me because I was talking about it all being fraudulent. And then when Josh Swider did an article out of California, he owns Infinite Analytics, and him and two other labs went and tested the shelf, and they go to the same dispensaries and buy the same product, all three of them. We took it back to their labs, and all three of them got very consistent results between them. And so basically it was, I think 87% of the product was considerably lower than what was claimed on it. And then he was finding pesticides up to 5 times the legal limit. From what I understand, he went to the state with that. The state didn't even pull the batches off the shelf. And so he went and wrote this article just because he was frustrated. So then all of a sudden, I was able to throw those articles down and say, see, I told you guys it was fraud. This is bullshit. And then all of a sudden I had labs from all over the country start reaching out to me talking about, this is happening in my state. If you give these guys real test scores, you'll never hear from them again. Basically the fraudulent labs. I started feeling sorry for the labs because the ones that wouldn't give the test scores or would fail people were losing business. And so it was like, where basically the bigger of fraud you are in the lab industry or the cannabis industry, the better you are, because THC scores directly relate to how much your product's worth. So I just got tired of competing with frauds. This is weird. Can you guys screen then? Because I can't see you guys.
It's all good.
But yeah, if you have any questions, I mean, basically that's how the lawsuit started, because all these labs started reaching out to me, and then attorneys started reaching out, asking questions. So I just started introducing them all to each other. I'm not involved in any of the lawsuits or anything, but I was just introducing, people from California to the attorney there and letting them figure out whatever they're going to do. Weed Week reached out to me, Alex, and he asked me, he's like, what are you talking about with this testing fraud? I was like, well, go test the shelf and you'll find out. And he tested the shelf, all the pre-rolls or whatever. That's what he decided to test. And that's how a lot of the lawsuits in California started, is from when Alex went and tested the shelf. So.
Well, it sounds like you instigated something really good and beneficial to the community anyway. And it's good that actually some labs and people started reaching out to you, and there are good people out there, because this is clearly a case of profit over health. And also just the whole situation with THC being a deciding factor in people's purchases, in the cost of the product, when we know it's just entirely bullshit. And in fact, well, not only the numbers bullshit in reality that they're being given, but the very idea that high THC equates to a better consumer experience or a better medicine, it's by and large nonsense, particularly even more in the recreational side of things, where the effects of cannabis when consumed are a prime factor. And all modern cannabis, to me, more or less, and I say more or less just as a caveat, really, I mean pretty much fucking all of it, anything the last 15 years and all this cookies infested garbage is utter trash. High THC cannabis provides me, at least, a very boring experience, very low and low vibrational, almost a low energy, just a short duration of boredom, just utter shit, really. Compared that to the old school, which provides you, it might have much lower THC levels, but it contains a broad spectrum of the other cannabinoids and terpenes that aren't present in, what's just become like a monoculture almost of everything over there. So yeah, we need to destroy the myth that THC or high THC is the be all and end all, and the more THC something has means it's a more stronger, potent experience. That's absolutely not the case.
Yeah, man. I mean, I totally agree with that. When I was younger, when I first got into cannabis, we'd have to, buy a pound from somebody where you got to look at it, make sure it smells right, smoke a bowl, make sure it's not harsh. There's all these identifying qualities of high quality cannabis. And if you gave somebody some money for a pound and went home and it was shit, well, your page is going to stop going off. You know what I mean? It's just like, it's good weed sells itself. And when lab testing, I thought that would weed out some of the people that are spraying and stuff, because a lot of people have beautiful bud, but it's all harsh and nasty. And it actually did the exact opposite. It was all of a sudden used for a tool to identify good bud. And all these dispensary owners that have never been in cannabis, they're just literally looking at pieces of paper like, I want to see your test scores, and and they don't care about all those other identifiers of quality. It's more or less, and it's getting better. I mean, the first few years in Oregon, most of the dispensary owners weren't even from here, so they had no idea that the consumers were actually more educated than they were, on good cannabis. Like, they'll come from Texas or something and open a dispensary, and it's like, it's one of those markets where if you're selling on high test scores out here, you're going to eventually lose.
Yeah, man. It makes perfect sense. Like, one big thing about it too, and like here in Florida at least, is the dispensary consumer does not really know or care about any other factor besides THC, and they kind of have no clue that THC isn't medicinal. And on top of that, it's so like funny too, because pure THC costs way less than full spectrum rosin. That right there should tell you everything, that THC really does not matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's where it's starting to happen here too, where people are realizing, okay, well, it doesn't matter if you have high THC, if you have like no terps, your plant, no trichomes and harsh when you smoke it. Because I mean, that's what got me into loving cannabis. Is when I was a kid, I was around people growing way better weed than what I see today. I mean, I was smoking like the original blueberry coming out of Eugene, and it literally tasted like blueberry, and
Yeah.
I mean, I was just loving the smoking part. It was smooth. You could smoke it all day and never get a sore throat or that rashy feeling in your throat, and
a nice day brightening high as well.
yeah, it's just I feel like that experience of smoking really good weed, like a lot of people from Oregon had that experience already way before rec. And so they can tell when something's good. And I really think like right now what's happening is the people that were already in cannabis in Oregon that are locals and they're vertically integrated are doing the best. Like, we don't have our own dispensary. And so we have to go sell to all these people that don't have that kind of experience. So you got to explain to them why that person's got a 45% THC flower and mine's only 25. You know what I mean? Like, it's just, it's crazy.
It's cringy.
And yeah,
Literally.
it's dirty.
It's the cringiest, like the cringiest things were the urban myths that the media were printing before legalization. So they would talk about car accidents or low sperm counts, like all these unproven urban
Estrogen.
myths, propaganda, right? And now it's like legalization brings in all of these quote unquote unprofessionals, and then they spin these stories like, and that's why I really like Trent so much, because he was one of those truthers out there that I knew would not get a lot of support because he's not singing the narrative, like the echo chamber, THC, THC, THC. It's just major cringe, and I'm really happy he's doing what he's doing, because that education is so important, and everyone's on the bandwagon. Like, even the legacy growers in the U.S. and Canada are all jumping on it, because, like Trent is saying, it's where the sales are, and marketing capitalism is fueling more false narratives. It's brutal.
Yeah, man, I clicked with you right away too, because I mean, your genetics were in Montana when I was in there, working with companies, and everybody loved your stuff. So like, I know you've been in it before all of this, and I try to connect with the ones that were in it before. And, so I've lost a lot of friends over this too, because a lot of my friends were okay with just, for lack of a better word, being big corporate bitch, so they're bitch or whatever. I don't know how to word it without, you know what I mean? But they're willing to go, and I understand that because they got kids too. But like, for me, it's like, I'm gonna stay independent, even if I gotta stay broke for a while. And, I don't want to help big business take over what used to be all just small growers. And, because I know it was like that even in BC all the way down here. It was a whole bunch of little grows, and that's one of the reasons why the quality was better, because these big grows didn't even exist. So, when you got your hands on a 5-pack, that was like a lot of weight at one time for anybody to be able to pick up back then, so it was all small grows. And I really think that the ideal future is having a lot more small craft businesses, and these big corporate groups, you see their stocks falling, and I don't think they're going to stop falling. I think they may get some monopolies in, but cannabis is full of activists. They just don't know what to do just yet. They haven't faced a monster this big, but I don't know. I don't see big business winning because I think their quality is terrible, so I don't see that changing.
I think in America is following suit with Canada. The only option to get rid of it was such a good time between 2012 and 2018 because the courts were threatening to take away our home growers' licenses, and it created this massive unity in the community. And honestly, legalization was just a way to dismantle that movement. I'd never seen anything like it in my life, right? Everyone was getting along. As soon as they announced they were going to legalize, I don't want to call them sellouts, but like you said, people got to do what they have to do. They have families, they have careers, they're sick of prohibition. They want to move forward in the right direction, but all of these quote unquote activists joined with the big corps and started ratting out their friends and who was growing and who was selling. So it just totally dismantled that unity that we all had, and people started trolling people. The competitive mindset came in and everyone was against each other. And it was a very elegant, cunning move on behalf of the government to do what they did. And
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, really, a lot of even the medical growers back in the day, in Montana, a lot of the medical quote unquote caregivers, since it was the first businesses, you could see the first lobbying happening at the state level in Montana, and they were trying to shut out anybody that had a cannabis record where they couldn't even work in cannabis, all sorts of stuff, and I'm a felon for cannabis. It's the only time I've ever been in trouble, and I got in trouble while I was in Montana, and it was only for a couple ounces, and I got a felony over it. And so I started, working for all these different caregivers because they didn't have records, and so I was building their grows out for them, and basically consulting, and a lot of them were like, yeah, we don't want any felon to be able to be a caregiver or own a business. And a lot of those same lobbyists were paying off doctors to funnel the medical cards into their companies because you were stuck to one provider, kind of like the West Coast. And so they had this weird scheme where whoever controlled the doctors could get all the cards. So there's people with like 1,000 medical cards, and it's all through their scheme with the doctor. And so it's called untethering. If you look up Montana untethering, there's a Hightimes article on it. But we fought to untether the medical patients from the providers because of the scheme they were doing, because it was interfering in the doctor-patient relationship, since the doctor was working for the clinics or for the cannabis company, not for their actual patients, if that makes sense. But a lot of those lobbyists went on to become national lobbyists right now that are lobbying literally at the DC level, but they started doing these weird little monopolies in Montana and carried it all the way to now. So I think it's one of those things where, like, a lot of small business, like you said, a lot of small players are trying to buddy up with these big corps, thinking, oh, hey, if I'm in with them, I'm gonna make it. But that's not the way it goes. Like, these people are like conspiring to make you work for them as an employee, not own your own shit. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course.
100%, man. So in terms of what you've seen, like, since you've just from how you're speaking, we could tell like you've been in the game for a very long time. How do you think the flower compares to like some of the old school strains you experienced, or like what are some of the biggest old school strains you've experienced?
I don't know if it's just the genetics are whack. I mean, for me personally, I think a lot of it is people keeping the highest THC strains they got and then getting rid of stuff that's amazing. Like, for example, Obama Kush had amazing aroma, and everybody started discontinuing it here because it didn't test high, you know, things like that. But I I think that the biggest problem is big grows, man, because you know, when I was a small grower out here in Oregon before I went to Montana, I'd never had bug and mold problems. I mean, our little grows were always running, you know, easily not spraying in flower. And then when I started setting up big grows in Montana, you're talking the first big warehouses prior to Colorado, I noticed immediately it was a lot harder to control bugs and mold in a big grow because it spreads like wildfire. And you know, I have a few different opinions than most growers, but I don't believe in sealing the rooms. Everybody's sealing and injecting CO2. And in a big grow, when you're sealing up a warehouse and not letting fresh air in, it just you're gonna be spraying regardless. And so like I spent a lot of time ripping out sealed rooms and creating fresh air exchange grows where basically you're controlling everything with algorithms, simulating high altitude and using high volume air to prevent the bugs from their reproductive rate from to the point where you don't have to spray. And so but that was the first thing I noticed is you could have been a great small grower, and as soon as you try to scale up, you're going to have problems even if you've been in it for a long time. And I think that a lot of the problem is right now is a whole bunch of people that like used to grow tomatoes and stuff on a big commercial level. They were the ones hired by big corps because they don't want to hire people like us, you know what I mean? So they hired all these guys that don't know shit about weed, you know, went in there and started doing whatever they were finding on Google or whatever, you know what I mean? And so or let me rewind it back. Okay, so like Colorado, when they legalized, a bunch of consultants went out there and started setting up these big grows, and then they started using those big grows for credibility to set up more grows across the country. And so there was no big investment capital in cannabis until Colorado legalized. And I just really think they just took the wrong route. And you know, now those same style grows are all over the country spraying like crazy. But that's just my personal opinion on it.
Yeah, no,
What's
that
been the
makes
biggest
sense.
discrepancy? I was going to ask you, what's been the biggest discrepancy you've seen between the inflated on the shelf test results and the ones that are produced in reality by your double checking testing, as it were?
You know, I think Alex's article on Weed Week kind of shows how dramatic it can be. I mean, I think he was finding stuff that was really 16% THC, and it was saying it was like 45, you know. So I mean, I think the highest one was 500% higher than what the actual THC score was. It was over 500% higher. It's unbelievable. And I think that hasn't stopped yet. Still to this day, it's still going on everywhere.
Yeah, it's got to be. It's got to be. Some of them are just so stupid. What the numbers you hear, and it's just like, how is anyone even being fooled by it?
You know, but what I think is really making the quality bad though is these guys are finding out what's being tested for, and then they'll go get, you know, a pesticide or fungicide that is not on the list of compliance testing. So like, for example, like neem oil, you can spray neem oil every single day. I heard Canada tests for it, but everywhere else you can spray neem oil every single day with dish soap, and your test will be perfectly clean. So like clean COA really doesn't mean anything. I mean, people are spraying all kinds of shit, and it's just like, oh, I got a clean COA and a high THC score. That must be good weed then, huh? You know, it's ridiculous. It doesn't even make sense.
It's so funny you say that because on LinkedIn specifically, there's all this cannabis viroid outbreak happening, especially in America. And all of these seeds and all these plants came with clean COAs. So it's like, what are these COAs actually doing for the producer and for the consumer? It's preposterous.
It's total junk. And the problem with it too is these big businesses have a special relationship with the labs, because if you're a real big grow, you're doing very high volumes of tests, so they do not want to lose your business. So you can pressure that lab in so many ways that a little grower couldn't. Say I'm getting 1 test a month and this guy's getting 40 tests a month, right? Like what I say don't mean anything to that lab, but that guy with 40 tests, I mean that's your whole living, you know what I'm saying? Like
They have leverage.
yeah, major leverage. And they can say, hey, well, I'm going elsewhere if I'm not getting a THC score at least 30% or whatever. And a lot of labs, have good chemists that are going to be like, no, I'm not going to cheat scores for you. But the problem is that guy is failing or lady is failing. And the one that's willing to give them those scores is making money, So I feel just as sorry for the labs as us cannabis companies, but we refuse to do that. And when we go into dispensaries and we got to compete with people getting 45% THC and ours is 25, it's just not fair to honest growers either, because a lot of honest growers aren't getting what they should be getting for their product, and then the consumer is getting this whack bud from a fraud instead of the stuff that was grown with some like true passion. It's testing is the exact opposite of what I pictured when I was pushing for it early on.
Yeah, it just sounds so awful, really. It's just unbelievable. So what's the solution?
In my personal opinion, the solution is, okay, we already have metric, a tracking software. I don't know do they use metric in Canada?
A few places.
Okay, so in my personal opinion, what they need to do is break up the business relationship between the labs and the cannabis businesses. And everybody's talking about cannabis safety, but no big company wants this. Any of them I've talked to, they're like, oh no, we're not going to do that. But in my personal opinion, you can make it where the labs contract directly through the state. So you can still have 10 labs in a state and have them contract through the state, where when I start sending a certain harvest off to dispensaries, the software should determine what dispensary that product's going to be tested at and what lab is going to test it. So I have no relationship with the actual compliance test. I could get a test myself before I send it off to make sure it's going to pass. But I really think that the actual testing should be done where the consumer gets the product, and without the lab having any business relationship with the cannabis business. It would be a way of where they know their product's getting checked, so they're going to be compliant. If you're a big business and you start failing at the shelf, you're going to lose a lot of money. So you're going to test anyway before you send. But as far as compliance testing, it should be labs contracting directly through the state that have no business relationship with cannabis companies. If that, I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah, it makes total sense.
Yeah,
in Canada,
right now,
they actually
go ahead.
they allow licensed producers in Canada to have their own in-house labs, which is also very scary.
Yeah,
because you could just
and
you
a
could
lot of
just
people
cook
are pushing. Yeah, and a lot of people are pushing for that here. They're like, the only way to solve this is everybody have their own in-house lab, and it's like, okay, wait a minute, that means there's not even a remotely third party at that point. They can just cook their own shit. It's totally crazy. It's like the pharmaceutical model or something, It's like, sorry, my kids are running around in here. But yeah, I mean, that's another way to shut down small business, because you start requiring that cannabis companies have their own lab. I know I'm out of business. I can't afford a lab or a chemist, and but that's the route they're going, because everybody that's got money for lobbyists, their whole goal is, okay, how can we make testing help us get control of the market? Because all these small businesses are kicking their ass on the West Coast. And that's why they're coming up with all sorts of, crazy stuff that has nothing to do with cannabis safety, but how do we control the market through testing? And I think that's the one thing I underestimated when testing started. I didn't realize that it was going to be used as a tool to promote big business. And I didn't even know big business was going to have such whack bud. Like, that's another thing. Like, I was shocked at how low the quality is on the shelf. I'm like, man, in the 90s, I was smoking shit 10 times better than this. Like, what is going on here? Like, so it's a double frustration, because consumers, like, I was smoking really good weed when I was a kid, and that's why I got into cannabis. And so, like, now there's people going into these dispensaries trying the bud, coughing their brains out, getting a headache, and being like, oh, that weed's not for me. And so, like, we're losing people that it could have been good for, where they're like, oh no, I don't like weed, but if they had some really high quality and smoked it, they would have loved it. It's just it doesn't even make sense the way it's going.
Well,
I think the
to answer
genetics play a part. Sorry, go on. That is.
to answer Blue Sky's question, if it was up to me and I had carte blanche on making the laws, I'd mentioned this to Trent before, either in a private message or openly in some of his posts, where it would actually be probably best if a government controlled regulating body did what Trent's friend was testing, and they would go around to all these dispensaries and they would do government in-house testing of these samples and then levy heavy penalties for these inflated numbers.
Yeah.
So like $10,000 fine or $100,000 fine or whatever it is for, like I really love that Trent's pushing the whole fraud thing, because that's what it is. It's a massive fraud, and fraud is a if Coca-Cola gets caught inflating or deflating numbers, like we're talking about massive fines. So I think fining these big bodies, these big corporations, would be the best avenue for them to go, oh well, it's not worth it for us to get caught. We need to be more ethical and honest to the consumer. To me, that would be a step in the right direction.
Yeah, hitting them in the pocket would definitely have an impact because that's their prime concern for lying in the first place. So yeah, I definitely
Well, and
agree with that too.
then they would be exposed, and who wants to lose
Yeah.
customers or like, even if a small person gets caught in any type of fraud, it gets in the paper, and then it isn't the monetary fine, it's actual massive loss of consumer base.
Reputation, yeah.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, the only way that it's real testing is if the labs aren't being forced to compete for our business. And if the state had its own lab and was doing compliance testing, then people would test their product just to make sure it passes if they're spraying, whatever, if they think it's going to fail or something. But at the end of the day, I mean, what you see right now is like the labs that are working for big entities are now the same people involved in a lot of that fraud and stuff are now pushing all these other things talking about cannabis safety, but they won't touch the topics we're talking about right now because they know that the people they're connected to want to be the client. And when you talk to a cannabis lab about this, they'll tell you, like the honest labs will say, hey, I know about all these things going on in these grows that if I said something, they could sue me because they're my client. So a lab can't even bring up the red flag to the regulatory body and say, hey, this farm keeps failing for this stuff on R&D tests. I know they're spraying all this stuff that we're not testing for. They can't even go there because if they go there, they're going to get slapped with a lawsuit by their client. So we need to make it where the consumer is the client, not us cannabis companies. It's all backwards. And I really think that when you look at the original laws being passed, I personally believe the lobbyists that wrote the very first rec laws are to blame for this because they were representing labs and cannabis companies. And so the labs got what they wanted, where every single batch had to be tested before it went to the shelf. And that was something that they're like, hey, for safety, for the reason they use the reason for consumer safety, we need to test every single batch before it goes to the shelf. So the labs getting high volume tests, and not all labs were involved in the lobbying, just certain big labs. But they got what they wanted. And then the cannabis company wanted no recourse if they did do something wrong. So they're like, okay, well, we want to be the client of the lab. The lab has a private relationship with us, blah, 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 blah. So basically that lobbyist is writing for the best interest of the cannabis company and the lab. And what they came up with is something that the consumer was completely left out of.
Wow.
My personal opinion, that's kind of how it went down. But, again, that's just an opinion from a grower. So.
Well, I mean, you're really on the front lines of exposing this. To date, what have been the consequences of people getting caught and getting sued? Have there been any out?
I think there's 7 lawsuits going on in California right now. None of them have been settled. A judge just recently recognized in one, the company was trying to say that they had a third party test it, so they're not responsible for the test being wrong, but they're acknowledging they were wrong on the shelf. And the judge just ruled that the lab is the agent of the cannabis company. So the cannabis company has no legal argument there that they're not responsible for it being fraudulent scores. So basically the lab and the cannabis companies are pointing at each other right now. And the cannabis companies are the ones getting sued, not the labs, which surprises me because I thought they would sue the labs over it. But right now it's the cannabis companies. They're pointing back and forth at the labs. The labs are saying, hey, we're not responsible for it. But none of those have been settled yet. And I think when they do get settled, I think that may help the testing fraud situation. You know, I don't know. I don't keep up on it too much, but the attorney's name is Christian Cho that filed most of those lawsuits. And the guy in Arkansas, his name is Luther Sutter. Yeah, I think Luther Sutter. He's suing a couple cannabis companies and a lab out of Arkansas. But there hasn't been a lot of lawsuits and there hasn't been a lot of change from the regulatory bodies. One thing I have seen, though, is lobbyists that are working for these cannabis entities are now starting these organizations talking about safe cannabis and all this stuff. And they have new schemes that they're running, basically because they know the regulatory bodies know that there's some fraud going on in testing. So they're presenting themselves as the answer of, oh, we need this done. We need this type of testing, you know, and it's completely avoiding the topics we're talking about them working for the cannabis companies and stuff like that. So they're just, I don't know how to explain it, but they're basically just taking everything that we were doing and twisting it into some other form of control grid. If that, I don't know if I'm just rambling. It's kind of early in the morning, you know?
No, it makes total sense.
Seems to me like all forms of law and regulation should just, or in an ideal world, would just not exist with cannabis. It might be like some issues very early on, but I feel it would all balance out because if everybody could just, every individual could just grow cannabis freely out on their own property without any state or government intervention, then ultimately quality would play out. People, the end consumer, would kind of regulate things themselves because they, you know, all the people spraying chemicals and all these kind of things anyway would be less because the people truly with a passion and a heart and who care about the end consumer would be growing. And over time, there'd be more of those people because they wouldn't be squeezed out for not being able to afford whatever it is, the entry into the marketplaces, all the testing, all that kind of thing. I just feel there should be it would be better ultimately after a little while. There's just no laws and regulations whatsoever. And we just were allowed to just do, you know, our own thing. Seems all the problems really
I
are to
think
do with the laws and the regulations because it's all leading to lies and fraud anyway.
And I think home grow, anybody that's lobbying against home grow is not part of the cannabis community. You know what I mean? They always play like they're activists and all this shit, and then they'll back companies that are trying to stop home grows. And to me, home grows keep us honest because if you're not getting good bud in the dispensaries and stuff, you should be able to grow your own bud, know it's good. I mean, you made a good comment that with these home grows, you know, people with passion are behind it. And that's why we were smoking better bud in the 90s because the growers were actually,
it was better.
yeah, and those growers were actually smoking their crops. So they don't want to spray it either because they're smoking it themselves. And you know, and that's where we have home grow here in Oregon, and that's, you know, a lot of the big companies are like, oh, you know, home grows are making it so we aren't making money and our companies are crashing. No, your whack weed is why you're crashing, you know?
Yeah, for the consumer, it'd be far better to be able to buy your smoke from the guy who's selling his personal excess, you know, because that guy is going to be growing a quality strain with great effects rather than some hyped up nonsense, and you're going to be sampling his best efforts because he's done it for himself. or if you see him maybe scaling up a little, he's got a separate garden to sell, but he's still doing it on that same kind of level, really. You know, it's just be so much better.
You know, when I was a kid, we'd go to parties and stuff and be loading bowls of this crazy dank bud that, you know, we just basically steal everybody's clientele, you know, because you go in there, you show them some crazy good bud, you know, they get your pager number and now you're who they're calling. And I feel like, you know, right now it's still the same way. Like people are going to get-togethers, you know, not, I don't mean to bring up kids. I just started when I was young, but I mean, say people over 21, they're going to these get-togethers at their friends' houses still to this day to smoke some weed, and home growers are pulling out some crazy dank bud that's never been tested, but it's dank as hell. And then somebody will pull out this pretty packaging and this ugly ass weed from the store, and they're gonna be like, "Oh, screw it! Hey, can I buy some of that from you?" And even if that home grower is not trying to do it for business, his own friends or his or her own friends are like, "Hey, you know, can I get some of that?" Because they can't get it at the store.
Yeah.
You know, and then also like there's dispensaries where they are growing good bud and have a small grow and they are passionate about it, and those people are kicking everybody's butt in Oregon, because once you go into one of those dispensaries, you get some really high quality bud that tastes amazing. You're never going back to that big entity with the whack flower, and you know, this just all of a sudden it's like you're a loyal customer to that dispensary. You know,
Yeah.
one of the reasons why we're leaving Oregon is because I couldn't get the capital raised to get a dispensary. We just have a grow. And that's one of the biggest problems, because if I was vertically integrated and had that relationship with the consumers, I would get enough money for our product where it'd be worth it. But right now, since I won't do the testing bull crap, you know, like, you know, I'm getting lower scores because I'll go with a lab that I know is doing it right. And then just the competing wholesale market here is insane. How it's the lowest prices in the country here in Oregon right now. And so like we're getting ready to go back to Montana and manage a company there, just because without selling ownership in Oregon and getting vertically integrated, it's not worth it. But the ones that are vertically integrated and built their local entities are doing really well. The only people that are.
Yeah, that makes sense, honestly.
So do you see
But
anything positive changing in the future?
if
Or is there too much
if everybody gets
resistance?
loud, you know, if everybody gets loud, I mean, I grew up in the Northwest around activists, so I'm loud, you know, and it's not necessarily good for me. Like all this stuff, like talking about all this stuff hasn't been good for me, because the rest of the industry is like, why is this asshole, you know, everybody knew the testing fraud was happening, but nobody wanted to talk about it. And I'm just like, blah, you know, I'll just spit it out. And at the end of the day, I feel like the rest of the small businesses need to realize that we're under threat. Like if these regulations nationally go the way of the people that were committing the testing fraud, that's the biggest thing, is these players are huge that are involved in it. And if we allow them to write federal regulations, we're all out. You know, and so I mean, we need to be supporting home grow, supporting small business licenses, make sure people can get a micro tier license if they want. In certain states, I mean, you need like $2 million in some states just to get a license. I mean, just the
Yeah, man.
license part, people building it. You know, that's designed for license capture, you know, by big entities. And so like for me, it's like the activism that it took to get medical here, to get legal here. I mean, I remember holding signs at protests talking about how people are ODing from medications, but cannabis, you know, you're not going to die from cannabis or whatever, you know, like all those old school activists. I'm hoping some of the younger people listen to them and all get active and loud while they have a chance, because either that or we're all going to just be employees working some, you know, chump wage for some company that all it cares about is its margins. And it won't be like it used to be, like in the old days where, like, you know, trimmers even got paid good. Everybody got paid that was around cannabis, and they got you know, that family type relationship as a group. You know, everybody kind of had their own crew back then. I can't explain it, but now it's like moving to this weird corporate, you know, like, I don't know. I had these old hippies when I was a kid always tell me, if it goes legalization, the corporations are going to take it over, this and that. All the shit that they were saying to me when I was young is exactly what's happening now. And I just don't want to see that happen, because I basically was raised in the cannabis community. I started selling at 14. I never stopped from 14 all the way to 41. And that's all I know. I mean, the cannabis community raised me. And so, like, to me, it's like, I don't want to see the community get pushed out and these corporate groups take it over like it's tobacco. This shit ain't tobacco, but I might be just raging against the machine and end up, on the sideline. But my goal is to see a whole bunch of small businesses, because that's kind of basically what it was back in the day when everybody had their own little circles. They had a couple growers, they had people pushing it or whatever, but it was all small time. I was small time when I was growing up in Portland. I had different grows at people's houses, and I'd pay their rent to let me use their basement for a grow or something. And I just had little grows, man, and I was breaking it all the way down into eighths, and was just enough to live and do what I wanted, like, as far as my time. And I would like to see that more of a model where people can have a nice little shop and kick out some really dank fire and be selling it to their own dispensary that they, in a neighborhood they grew up in. I don't want to control North Carolina, Mississippi. You go down the line where all these different states, these corporations are like, there's only going to be 5 left, and they're selling to investors, we're going to own every dispensary in half the states in the country. It's like, that whole mentality to me is the exact opposite of what the cannabis community really is. And so
I think shit's
I'm
going to
just
get really fucked when, sorry, but it just popped in my head. I think shit's going to go really bad for everybody on the lower level or the traditional level, or when all these CDBCs and fucking digital currency comes in and the end of cash.
Yeah, I mean, if we don't have small licenses, we're screwed, because the underground's over. I mean, it's going legal no matter what. It's going legal. And I've been out of the underground since 2007, so I've been doing it 100% legal for 16 years now, and I'm not about to go back. So I got to fight for licenses. I got to fight for, because I got a lot of kids. So, like, for me, anybody that's just like, oh, I'll just stick to the underground and not worry about the licenses and all that shit, their clock is ticking on them. And with the modern technology, that era is over, and I really think that the battle is to look at like tap brew houses where you got a small brewer and they're selling all their beer at their own tap house. That is the only beer model that's growing right now in beer. And we need to learn from the beer industry and say, okay, we want our own micro brewery model of cannabis where we're producing our own cannabis, selling it. We're just a little entity, local. Brewers are really known for local, being local and being activists in the beer industry. And I think that we need to understand how they did that and do that in cannabis, because that's the ideal dream, is where I go to your state. Excuse me. If I go to your state, I'm able to go check out your, cannabis tap house model, where it's like, you got your own genetics, you're like Medman, just, kicking out your own genetics. And I'm able to go check it out at your place. And maybe you get big enough where you're selling it, to a few other places or whatever. But I don't want to see it where it's like, when you go into the mall and it's the same stores, no matter what state you're in, you just go there and it's all the same stores. Like, that model of business is not meant for cannabis. And I'm just hoping that some of these big players start realizing that they're better off investing in a whole bunch of small companies. Like, if I had billions of dollars behind me, I would invest 25% in a whole bunch of entities across the country and let the locals control it. And if they do good and your investment is successful, you got a local powerhouse at that point. And so it's one of those things. It's like, they're obsessed with control and they want their name on everything, but why not be the minority interest holder of the company and then let a whole bunch of local entities take off? Whoever does that, if a big entity decides to do that, nobody's going to stop them, because they'll be unstoppable for a lot of reasons, but we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, because seems to me like cookies has almost already become like the McDonald's of cannabis. And it's like how you were saying, It's every shop in every shopping centre or mall in every city and town is all identical, and I can see it already happening. Really, starting to
Yeah,
happen.
and see, and that's why, okay, like, you know, everybody kisses Berner's ass, and I'm telling you, Berner is not from the cannabis community. Like, I don't care what
Berner's a
anybody.
fucking prick, a fat
Yeah,
thief, and a fucking
he's
total
a
cunt.
wannabe godfather. I mean, I hope he'll never see this probably because he's too big a fish. But I'm telling you right now, he's not from the cannabis community. He's a fake. He talks about how he almost got robbed up in Humboldt and stuff. I was like, you got robbed by a bunch of hippies, man. Like, I mean, just anyway, like, I'm not trying to talk too much shit on him, but I'm just saying, like, he tries to act like he's this godfather or something, and it's like, this guy's a
Godfather of
phony.
what? The shittest, one of the most shittest cannabis varieties ever to fucking exist. Well done,
Yeah,
Berner. Well done.
yeah, and that's what bothers me, is because, like, groups like them, I mean, they're in a position where they are doing a bunch of stupid shit, stealing people's genetics, doing all kinds of stuff, and they're getting sued left and right. And if he would have just invested 25% in a whole bunch of small entities, then he's not in a position to get sued. If I own 75% of a company and I'm the one doing the testing fraud, I'm going to get sued, but that person owning 25% is not going to be liable, you know? And so, like, that's the problem, is these big entities got so big that they're not in a good position legally, even because of all the bullshit that's happening. But at the end of the day, like, all these newbies are all kissing Berner's ass like he's an OG. Like, it's like, nah, man, nobody knows who that guy is,
He's a
and
plant in the
nobody probably knows
community
who
for
I am.
sure. He's become a face planted in the community, definitely inducted into Freemasonry to get into that club. His stupid little goat chain that he wears has nothing to do with the greatest of all time. It's just Baphomet worship for these Masonic pricks that have aligned themselves with him. And he's just a thieving little scumbag. Him and other plants in the community, like Kevin Jodry, who I always talk about, stealing my skunk and shit. Kevin Jodry made a post, like, because I'm from Wales. He posted a pack of seeds, exactly how I used to send my seeds, a little bit of grain of rice in the bag and stuff like that. And fucking said, "Oh, my crew out of Wales sent me these skunk seeds." And then that fat prick Berner chimes in, "Oh, pop them," because it's just like a dig at me because I'm from Wales. There's no other fucking person in Wales who's got real legit skunk, yeah. Fucking anywhere else, so I put it out there really that much. Anyway, so yeah, they're just fucking thieves and just degenerate people in general, really.
Well, it's a
You
matter
know, to
of
sum
the
it up.
right place at
Go
it's
Go ahead,
Douglas,
sorry.
is that?
it was a matter of the right place at the right time. If anyone was on IC Mag around 2009, the Girl Scout cookies thread had like 250,000 hits, and that's where cookies rose to power, was social media. And he just so happened
Yeah.
to be in the right place at the right time. That's all it comes down to.
His weed is designed for social media. It's designed so it looks good in a picture. That's all it's
Yeah.
designed for, nothing else.
Yeah.
You know, in the way, from what I understand, like, I don't know much about the guy, but I know that he grew up in Arizona, and no offense to people in Arizona, but the Northwest had the fire, man. Like the best growers in the world are from BC down to Humboldt, you know, and then outdoor and indoor basically meet where I'm at in Eugene, where anything south of us is all outdoor, anything north of us is all indoor, basically. And all the best growers were in the Pacific Northwest, from BC to Humboldt. And when you look at him, okay, like, he started out in a dispensary, from what I understand, as a bud tender. And yeah, and then so for one thing, like, we were growing before there was ever dispensaries, you know what I mean? All these genetics were being bred way before all of this. And then he comes in and literally takes the style of a West Coast grower, and he starts mocking the style, basically to make an image of himself as because he was around us, you know, he's around, you know, West Coast growers, and he started basically copying the image. And was able to sell it to investors, where most of us that were involved in the underground a long time ago, we none of us know how to raise capital, build operating agreements, know our contracts are right. You know, he was
Hence
able
his
to bring in
Freemasonic
investment
connections.
capital. Yeah, whoever's behind him was able to put together this package, and they were able to say, hey, look, this guy knows cannabis. And so I'll give him that. He was able to raise a lot of capital. But in the same token, like if you're a real, like, you know, really from it, you don't sell out like that, in my personal opinion. Yeah, some people are going to sell out, and I hate using the word sell out because that could be so general, but like there's no way that I'm going to help big corporations take over something that should be all small business, you know. And that's where I just don't like him for that reason, you know. And anybody else that's trying to like have every dispensary in the country, it's like, dude, let people that were in their community catching felonies for cannabis and all kinds of shit, let them run and own dispensaries. You know, I want to see people like having a shot at something to leave their kids. And just like a restaurant owner that might own a restaurant in their neighborhood or something, that's something they can leave to their family. You know, an ideal future of cannabis is where there's thousands and thousands of small businesses and everybody doing something that they can leave their family, you know. And that's I just wish more growers had the business salve, because I had to learn it the hard way. I've screwed up on contracts where I'm in a legal battle and can't even start up my grow because we're fighting over some aspects of the operating agreements or whatever, you know, stuff that I've learned now that I'm in a different position now because I understand all that stuff. But as a grower, everything was about handshake, word of mouth, like, because your word meant everything back then. If you're shady, all of a sudden you're gonna lose all your plugs, everything. Like, but nowadays it's all about knowing business. And so you need those professionals around you that help you, and good attorneys and all that stuff. But the growers right now are getting treated like shit. Like, growers used to be important to, you know, to the whole process, but now they want to pay them, you know, $15 an hour to go in their grows and spray pesticides or whatever. You know, it's like, it's a total joke. And I'm just hoping that it's like breweries, the most successful breweries were done by craft small brewers. You know, they weren't, you know, big like business professionals or anything like that. They just knew how to brew beer, and they got in with the right business people and they build their business. And I'm hoping to see more growers in these C-suites, you know, hopefully.
I genuinely believe they didn't like initiate the wide scale like legalization that we're seeing across the world and the states and the world until they'd almost utterly destroyed everything that was really good about cannabis. And I think Berner, I think that there was the people who really pull the strings and make the moves and make changes in the laws, etc. I think they needed a front man, and I think also that product, that cookies as a product is just garbage. It's nothing like truly good cannabis should be in terms of its effects. It's kind of blinded a whole generation of young people that cannabis must look like that, and if it doesn't, it's garbage. And if it doesn't have the inflated THC figures we've been talking about, it's garbage. All of that. And yeah, I just think he was that picked to be that front man and to do that. He had a role to play that was designed for him, and he just filled that role, I think, or designed for somebody, and he was used to fill that role.
It's a great example of brand power.
Yeah. He's a built-up brand, a created brand, yeah. And
Yeah.
unfortunately, if I made a comparison, cookies to me is like McDonald's. It's just trash.
You know, and I even look at the name cookies. Like, if I'm talking about cookies, my kid's gonna be like, cookies? You know what I mean? It's
Exactly.
like,
It's there to appeal to kids. Yeah.
you know, it's like, I just feel like he's you know, and not trying to just sit here and talk shit, but I think that brand is eventually gonna be under a lot of pressure. And you know, all the other big players are under pressure too, without even naming names. You know, look at Canopy growth stock. You know, these guys are all under major pressure because they sold to investors, hey, we're the big thing, we're gonna take over the whole industry. And you know, even the stuff going on in California with those groups suing and claiming, you know, I don't even want to get into it, but yeah, I mean, there's so much going on right now with lawsuits within the industry. I think it's all going to pan out to where there's an open window where small business could survive, and the right big investors, if they start investing in a whole bunch of small businesses that have proven they got high quality, that is, you know, I mean, that whoever does that is going to be unstoppable. As long as the lobbyists don't write us out and make it so small business can't even exist. That's the only thing that could stop small business from winning, is if they're able to get rid of home grows, if they're able to make licenses extremely expensive, you know, do things like in Florida where you got 24 million people and there's only like 15 cannabis companies or whatever, you know, stuff like that. That's crazy. We have 1,400 farms in Oregon and there's only 4 million people. So just as an example, we got 1,400 farms,
Yeah.
4 million people. You look at, you know, Florida's probably got 6 times as many people as we do, and they only got like 15 farms. I mean, that's the model that we got to make sure doesn't happen on a national level.
Yeah, it's retarded to just to say the least. Like, nobody knows what quality product is. They think that they're getting good quality from the dispensary. I've gone to one of the Curaleaf farms, and they told me they were growing autoflowers only, outdoor. And it's just sad, to be honest.
I think you used the key word, Rich, quality. That's all I care about. Quality. Quality, obviously, of the flower and of what we're consuming as a physical thing, but quality of effects, quality, just quality cannabis. That's all, you know, all I want to see come back. Like Trent talked about the 90s cannabis, that kind of thing. That's the main thing that's my bugbear, and even my main thing I rant against Berner for, is because he is responsible for the proliferation of shit quality, you know, and I'm about the reverse of that. And the other thing I'm concerned about, I don't know if you know much about this, Trent, is how much genetic modification is going to be allowed into the industry and how much that will come into effect over the coming